everyone. I am Lauren Van Hemert, and this is Beltline to Broadway and Live with Lauren. And I'm very excited to be sitting with Jarvis Antonio Green. There are not enough characters on the screen to put
The whole name.
the whole name, who is directing the upcoming production of Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill. Who doesn't love Billie Holiday music? It's worth seeing it just to hear the amazing score. And then aside from that, we have a fierce actress playing Billie Holiday, and we're going to talk all about that. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we will try to get to them. But welcome, Jarvis. I'm so excited that you're here, and we chatted a little bit a minute ago, and I'm just excited to keep talking.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Lauren. It's really a pleasure being here and sharing space together.
It is. And it's so interesting. So often when I do these interviews, I do a great amount of research prior to looking for nuggets to infuse in our conversation. And your resume is just so chock full of those nuggets. I didn't have to go looking very far. So this is exciting.
Wow.
We were talked a minute before we went on the air. You grew up in South Carolina. And what I love about reading your story is another artist that I really appreciate. He was my very first interview, Alton Fitzgerald White. It's kind of similar to his story in a bit, because he talked about how if it had not been for a mentor or a teacher who pointed him in the direction of using his voice and finding his gift of singing at church in a choir, that his path could have been very different. And so, can you talk a minute about your journey? You're growing up in South Carolina as a Black man, and how a person guided you and kind of brought you into this choir, or sent you kind of in that direction that kind of started you on this path.
Yeah. That name sounds so familiar. Is it Alton
Lion King.
or
Alton.
Lion King? Got it. Mufasa or
Mufasa.
Mufasa. Okay, got it. I was like, that name sounds so familiar.
Now he grew up in Cincinnati, but similar circumstance, single mother.
Yep.
And just he said he had that one teacher who said you should sing, and sent him on his way.
Yeah. So I was singing in a sort of a youth choir at church, and then like our music, conductor, teacher, whatever you want to call it, she would give me opportunities to sing solos on Sunday, and I would, prepare and get my solos ready for Sunday service. And I remember like vividly, there was a version of His Eyes on the Sparrow that was done by the Mississippi Children's Mass Choir, I think, and there was like this young male boy soprano that led the solo, and I kind of mimicked his version like exactly like the recording. And I remember, the feeling that I got, not only like a vivid moment of just like, oh wow, like my singing is like a connection to my soul, right? It's like the voice of my soul. And then I also saw how the congregation reacted to my voice. And so there was a woman who was in my church, Sister Hargrave. If you're watching or any of your family are watching, thank you. She told me about this boy choir that that had started up, and she was like, "Hey, I think that you should audition for this choir." And granted, I had no idea what that meant at all, but I was very curious and excited about, auditioning for this boy choir. And so I went to audition, and there I go up the stairs. There is a man sitting at the piano and another person, and I'm just like, okay, like what is this going to be? And so he started playing notes on the piano, and then he would say, can you sing that note? And I would sing it, and he'll play another note, and I would sing it, play another note, and I would sing it, and like did all of these warm-ups and various different things. And he was saying things that I didn't know, like, oh, you have perfect pitch, or you have a really, high voice, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, long story short, I got into this choir, and that was sort of my home away from home. I met new friends, and I think that the home away from home was that, growing up in poverty in this apartment complex called Fairview Gardens, which was rich in its own way, because like I had cousins across the street, my grandmother lived next door, all these various things, but it was difficult, and I saw the kind of strain poverty had on my parents and folks that were living in our community. And it's taxing on the mind, it's taxing on the body. And so it was an opportunity to sort of escape and meet new people and learn what it means to be a musician and learn and read music. And then from there, we toured the country, and I remember a concert when we came back home, a concert that we had, a lady who was running a drama school, Diane Lee, who I love dearly. And I'm so glad that I was able to see her a couple months ago. She was like, hey, gorgeous voice. There's a theatricality to your singing and to your voice. And I love the way that you connect song, your voice to the storytelling. And she was like, would you be interested in auditioning for this program that basically like teaches the fundamental aspects of theatrical storytelling? And so I auditioned for this program, and then my network expanded, and I met, artists or students that were, interested in being on the stage and interested in the art of theatrical storytelling. And that just sort of set me on a path that I didn't know was gonna, come my way. And this started at the age of 10. And then from that on, I've been sort of involved in, I've been creating and using my voice and my gift to, make a change, make a difference, and tap into spirit and my God-given talent. So, yeah.
I love that. And we spoke about before we went on. I feel like when I do these interviews, everybody's journey, everybody's path is different for how they got to this place in their career, in their art. But the one through line I always hear is if you surrender to your faith and you have faith in God, that he will put you exactly where you need to be to find it. It's when you resist that you get that it doesn't work out. So
Yeah.
how does your faith play into this? Because I feel like as we're talking, there's just so much divine intervention in your story.
Yeah.
Not that
Oh my
there's not
gosh.
talent, because there's tremendous
Yeah,
talent, but it's
of
just,
course. Of course. Of course, of course. That's really interesting that you say that, because I think my resisting early on had to do with, um, as a Black queer man growing up in church, um, I was told that I was going to go to hell, right? And I had, knowing that I had a connection to spirit and high and source and God, and then the conflict I had and the turmoil that I had inside, knowing that I was queer and gay from a very young age, and so in those moments of once I found the boy choir and found these sort of theatrical programs and go to college and started working professionally, it was like what is my relationship? And so as I sort of really had to excavate, and purge, and it was and sort of exercise religion from my being, and really kind of go back to like what it means to be in relationship with God and my own personal relationship with God, then I was able to tap into flow. But yes, spirit God has been with me throughout these processes, throughout my entire life. But now I have sort of a deeper, more profound connection to spirit, and I've been able to really learn how to let go and sort of tap into that little boy that found God as a kid, and I think a lot of my work right now is that returning to that boy, returning, and tapping back into that sort of that like connection that I had, so that I can continue to kind of deepen and develop and grow in my relationship, to God and to spirit. So yes, absolutely. Like when we do surrender, when we do let go, that's when all of the magic happens. And I love. I was having a conversation with my nephew not too long ago, and he's been struggling on. He is an artist as well, and so he's been struggling with figuring out his next path and what to do. He spent a summer with me interning with my company a couple years ago, and he's been back home and trying to figure things out, and he's kind of in that at that crossroad of trying to figure out like what's next. I'm like, that's the most beautiful space to be, because when you have to let go, when you um know that you can't control and you don't have the answers, that's when um the universe, that's when God is like conspiring to give you your heart's desire. Like it's a really beautiful place to be, and I've learned to love it and be okay with it. It wasn't always easy to do, because when you leave home at an early age and you're out in the world and you're trying to figure things out, and finding a support system and finding, folks that like, if you grew up in an area where people just stay there in where they grew up, it's really difficult for I won't speak for them, but I've noticed in my experience that that support that happens on a local level home doesn't quite extend to the ones that need to leave the nest and leave home. So, yeah, it's yeah, letting go is been a mantra of mine for some years now, and it's I live by that value.
I love this so much. There are so many young people that follow us on this platform. I know there's so many young people, aspiring artists at North Carolina Theater Conservatory, and your words mean so much to them because they're at
Mm.
that crossroads. They're at that
Mhm.
space, and it's scary. And the more we can reinforce that it's going to be okay. You're going to find that place, your home, your path, your journey. You have to have faith. So I love this so much. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course,
So
of course.
now we'll talk about why you're in North Carolina. You are here to work on this amazing production of Lady Day at Emerson's Bar and Grill, starring Angela Robinson. It doesn't get much better than that kind
I
of
know,
star
right?
power. Oh my gosh. It's interesting. This is a show that has been done several times in recent years on regional stages in this area. Um, so, talk about coming into this space and collaborating with Angela, put your own stamp on this piece while still at the same time paying homage to the great Billie Holiday.
Yeah. Yeah, gosh, it's been quite a journey. So I did the production in 2018 with my company, and it starred Francesca Harper. And again, how this whole conversation is about how God just does its thing. Francesca was slated to do it with us here in Raleigh, and God opened an incredible door for her, and she's now the artistic director of Alvin Ailey 2. And so she had to step down from doing the show, but she was so gracious to connect me to Angela. And so I we had a Zoom call, and I just knew instantly that Angela and I felt like we've known each other for a long time. I mean, it was so easy, and I didn't know about her career and her work, and I'm just like, I'm getting so many like text messages and phone calls from like family who's been following her work on television for so many years, and they're just like, oh my God. I'm like, there are going to be so many happy Black aunties and moms in North Carolina, like over the next couple of weeks, because Angela is here. And so, she was just so gracious in spirit, uh, and it got passed on to Eric to do all of the kind of final details of working together, like contracts and all of that. And I got a text from Eric and said that Angela was in, and like I I I, I immediately thought that, like, oh my gosh, this is so God, because it's just so nice to be able to expand networks and expand on the show. Like, I was able to do it with my company, and I think that as a someone that's running a company and directing, it's very difficult to do. It is because you're not only putting up the show, but you're thinking about all the many things that the company like needs to make the show work. And so I don't really fully get to tap into my the capacity at which I can direct a show, because I have to do so many other things. And so being able to come back to the show, working with the new artists, and being away from where I do a lot of my work has been such a honor and a blessing. And I've been waking up every morning just giving such thanks, and also just like it's been a great opportunity to reflect back to myself on like why I'm in this business, and like my choices and my style of directing. And being in the room with Angela is just, as someone who has worked as much as she has worked, there could be tension, or there could be like, pushback on various different things that I'm asking for, especially in this short amount of time. And she is just completely open and vulnerable to and trusting my vision for the show. And it's one of the best collaborative experiences I've had. It's just been a joy. It really has.
So, what did you learn directing that 2018 production? I mean, obviously, you were wearing many hats there, but
Hmm.
what did you learn about Billie Holiday, about the piece, about the structure of the piece, um, about the music that you're bringing to this production?
Mm, 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 mm. Yeah, I think in 2018, we, I don't remember the year that Audra did it. Um, we can look that up, but like that was still so fresh in my mind. And so
Mm,
there was a lot of thinking about that. Can you hear me? Okay.
I
Can you hear me?
can.
Okay. There
I
was a lot
can.
of thinking about that production and thinking about her in the show. And so that kind of bar and that kind of expectation is really not achievable, and that's not the point of remounting or creating something. And so now just letting, being able to like have distance from it, and like letting go of like trying to emulate or trying to, and really tapping into the text in a way that I haven't, that I wasn't able to do in 2018. I'm just like learning so many different things. Like we had a conversation the other day. There was a line in the play that she says about the folks in the kitchen, needing their like cards, right, to prove that they aren't sick. And I'm just like, oh my God, like that is so reflective of the times. And truly, I think in also in 2018, I'm learning more and more of just like how we're just coming up to the same things that Billy was struggling with in the 40s and the 50s, in terms of like what it means to be Black in this country, um, but also what it means to care for artists. I mean, we still get the luxury of her voice now on our Saturday mornings, making our breakfast, playing Easy Living. Like, I mean, get to enjoy that. But then, like, this woman who is still giving and feeding us, like, was alone in her death, right? And like that us needing to show up for the art makers and the cultural workers and the people that are contributing to our society in ways that will live on beyond them being here. It's just really, really, really important. Um,
Mm,
I've learned that I've learned how the songs really do um, push the story forward. It really does. It's not, and I think the thing that we've been working on is like not thinking about um, these songs like a musical cue, and really tapping into like fundamentally what's going on in Billy's mind, right before this song happens, or what does the song mean to her in the context of her life? Like, there's a line in the song of like, oh, this is for the Duchess, and like all of the songs really are in the show have a specific connection to someone in her life, and really kind of weaving in that kind of depth and storytelling. um is sort of really, really profound. And I think that like I'm playing a little bit more. I'm exploring a little bit more, because we've been able to sort of like let go of those expectations. And I think that allowing Angela to find her own version, and
mm,
really, it's such a gorgeous piece, and it's like just tapping into truth. Like it's all about the truth of the matter. I mean, there's some funny moments, there's some sad moments, but really, really letting Angela find her own version of Billie Holiday. And I think being kind to ourselves, and not
mm,
there's some intense moments that happen in the show, and letting ourselves leave early, rehearsal, letting us leave early if we need to, letting us take our time to process the material, letting ourselves time to sort of process in ways that, like, not only that we lived through a year of a pandemic, but like the vulnerability of what it means for a woman to be on stage, a Black woman to be on stage for 90 minutes, to journey through the story. There needs to be this level of care and tenderness and uh, you know, yeah, and there needs to be sort of a gentleness in the approach. I think Angela shows up and she's like, what is it that we are trying to get, and what are we trying to accomplish, and we do that. But then we have to layer on these other aspects. It's like, it's really not about putting on a show. We're going to put it up and it's going to be wonderful and beautiful, but it's like, what does this mean for this, for Black women to be seeing this? What does it mean for young artists that are in the audience? What does it mean for, how are we showing up in the room every day after a year of a pandemic and social unrest and this reckoning in the American theater? Like, like, how can we, show up in ways that are propelling us into the future, and sort of learning how to decentralize and white aesthetics and white supremacy in our sort of storytelling. And I'm like, it comes up in so many ways, and just sort of finding little nuggets. We can't do it all, but finding little nuggets to say, hey, we're gonna approach this differently. So it's this combination of like rigor and holistic approach, and really good theatrical storytelling.
It's so interesting to me. So I saw this. This will be my third encounter with Lady Day and Billie Holiday. And the first time I saw it was pre-COVID, and it was a beautiful production. Connie McCoy Leach, who is Angela's understudy, played Lady Day, Billie Holiday, in that North Raleigh Arts Creative Theater production, and she did such a beautiful job. And really, my takeaway from that production was, this is a tour de force performance. This is an amazing performance. I was so focused on the performance. My first show back post-COVID, and this was really early on, before most theaters were open. Cape Fear Regional Theater did a production of this, and we showed up masked, and we were sitting outside in this parking lot. We were all socially distanced. And it's so funny because whereas the first time I saw it, I was so focused on the music and the musical performance and the musicality Connie brought to it. The second time I saw it, the narrative that was being told hit me in a place, because it was after George Floyd. It was after this reckoning that we've seen in American theater, and it just hit me in a very different way. And I feel like audiences coming back to this piece will really find a different poignancy and a different, I don't even know if this is a word, profoundness. It's a profound piece. Her story is very profound.
Yeah.
Coming back to it now. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for audiences to see this. I want to talk about something. We're talking about Angela and this amazing gift she brings to this role. There's such a delicate line between portraying the essence of someone on stage and trying to mimic or copy them, or doing an impersonation, which kind of seems cheap. And so when I've seen this piece work, and I'm sure it's going to happen with Angela, how do you as a director help collaborate and help find the essence with an icon like Billie Holiday, and walk that line between imitation and just reimagining the essence? if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I think that the first day I kind of gave them sort of her and Jimmy and our creative team sort of dramaturgical packet sort of rooted in like timeline, when she wrote the songs, what they meant, all kinds of information sort of surrounding the play, but surrounding her life, right? So rooting it,
Mhm.
starting there. And then I think that um, it's about finding little things that you can hold on to that helps in the storytelling. Like one of the things that
Mhm.
Angela um, took on that she likes is that like this thing that Billy did with her arm to kind of it was like self-soothing but also to keep tempo, right? And sort of
Mhm.
working with that arm, component, and also just it helps Angela kind of work through all of the end of the show when she's had a moment to go backstage and shoot up heroin and things like that. So really tapping into that essence or that component of Billie Holiday's voice. Um, and then another thing that vocally, like later in her life where her voice was a little bit lower, and like I think that you hear Billie Holiday's voice, but like singing voice, and it sounds rich and luscious and things like that. But like interviews that she's done, um, it's like Angela's like, oh my God, this is my auntie. This is like black aunties. And so tapping in, using that component of it as well. Right. And so, and those are just like two things, right? And then Angela is bringing the rest, right? Um, and I think that really does kind of allow for a fullness of a character, right? Like someone who's had this incredible career, who's trained and studied, right? Who can bring their own, and then having moments or pulling from Billie's life and her and who she was and her physicality and her voice to kind of help like really immerse herself into the role.
And I think the Duke Energy Center is a perfect space for this because the theater doesn't feel big. It feels
No.
kind of intimate. So you're going to have this kind of intimate concert
Yeah.
experience, which is what the play is about. I think in a
Right.
giant theater would use something, but it's a nice intimate space. And the way they have the seating, that North Carolina Theater is doing the seating is really lovely. So I think it's going to be
Yeah.
exciting to
It's gonna be
watch.
so exciting. I got to see the space yesterday, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the space is perfect for the show. And we really are bringing. The stage is a fairly big proscenium stage, and we're bringing everything down. Like we are like not using the fullness of the stage. We're bringing it all down, so it really does feel intimate. I think that like from the center mic to the first row, I don't know, maybe 10 feet,
I was going to
So
say it has to be 10 feet. So it has to be
yeah,
10 feet.
with COVID and everything. Yeah, yeah. So it's like it's not it's super intimate. And like being able to bring it in really helps with that. Our scenic designer is wonderful.
Oh, yes. I want to talk a minute about your work. You are the producing artistic director and founder of a Black theater company in I'm
White
just
River
going to say it,
Junction.
one of the whitest
Oh,
areas in the country.
yeah.
Vermont.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and there, several years ago, you started an incubator for new works for Black playwrights.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious. There's so much great work original work by Black artists that's being produced on main stages on Broadway right now. I saw Thoughts of a Colored Man the last time I was there. I thought it was brilliant. Trouble in Mind just opened. I know you're involved with Roundabout. And so, do you think that we are finally seeing a cultural shift in the stories we're going to see on our main stages and those people who get to tell those stories? Or is this kind of like a season of reckoning and next season we're going to go back to business as usual?
Oh gosh, that is the question. That is the question. I don't know. I don't know. I go back and forth, but like, is this just a moment, or are we really going to, are we going to like move forward in the way that we need and we want? I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that the work of JAG, the work of Roundabout, the work of various different theater companies, the shows that are happening on Broadway right now, particularly Thoughts of a Colored Man, Chicken and Biscuits, Passover, that just happened.
Lives is about to open.
Exactly,
Live.
Trouble in
Yeah.
Trouble in Mind. The Broadway Advocacy Coalition winning this sort of special Tony Award. So I'm hopeful that there is enough momentum to propel us into the future that we want. I just always worry about like the care and is this just a moment, and then all of a sudden like these artists their work is on Broadway, and then after it, then like what happens, what do they need, like will they be supported in the same way? Is it just about money and doing the right thing, you know what I mean? Like so I think that there are truly I feel strong that like outside of commercial theater, it is institutions like the work of JAG and like theater companies like the Movement Theater Company, National Black Theater, all of these companies that are doing this sort of building and have been doing this building and work for a long time outside of the commercial theater scene. I think that focusing on continuing to support those institutions, because that's actually what's feeding this moment right now. And I think that if Passover didn't have an opportunity to develop and to do X, Y, and Z, Chicken and Biscuits didn't have an opportunity to do development at X, Y, and Z, like I don't know if they who would have been ready for this moment, right? Like who would have been like ready to just sort of jump in and be like, hey, I have something that's ready, that's been workshopped, and a producer could just like put it on its feet. So so just if we can continue to support the institutions that are fostering these artists to create and to develop, then I think that I'm hopeful that we will be able to kind of keep going with it. But it does take support.
And audiences have to support these shows by showing up and being open, not just to stories about Black trauma, but stories about Black joy and just storytelling. Because I think, I Chicken and Biscuits has gotten such mixed reviews, but it's okay to just be, even though it's at a funeral, I get it, but it's okay to laugh. It's okay to not be rooted in this trauma narrative. We get other stories. It's okay. Audiences have to show up.
Absolutely. Audience have to show up. Audiences have to be. We have to reimagine what our audiences look like, and that all takes some significant work.
A lot of work, yeah.
Yeah.
In your spare time, because I have such spare time right now, um, you created a Black theater curriculum for Northwestern, Notre Dame, and Northern Vermont University. As I've had conversations about what anti-racist theater industry looks like, many have said that it starts at the academic level, that creating
Mm.
anti-racist institutions starts at the academic level. Do you agree with that? And how has the conversation or the exploration around Black theater changed on the academic level, particularly in predominantly white institutions like Notre Dame? I'm curious.
Yeah, yeah. Gosh, that's. I think at first, I think the change happens like in community first. Like, how can like part of me is like excited that I can show up in these academic spaces and give a different approach to curriculum and to
Mm,
new ways of making theater, you know? Um, and but like also how can that academic approach, how can sort of find its way into communities as well, right?
mm,
Because there's a privilege to showing up and doing it into academic spaces. um, and so I'm always kind of torn between those two worlds and finding ways at which we can um, beef up how this gets into our communities as well. And I think that like if it's in an academic space, hopefully that kind of transitions into sort of community organizing and community building, because that is sort of a fundamental value of my practice and processes and the way I go about teaching, what it means to live and create, theater that is rooted in Black joy. And so yeah, to answer your question, I would say that it's kind of this combination of like, um, yes, there's an academic approach, but truly, we have to be thinking about how we are organizing our communities, and communities meaning like once we have this information, right? Like, and are making work for that's centering Black stories and Black joy, then how do we have an audience and communities? How can we bring that to the communities that it's for, right?
mhm.
And really thinking about that in a way, um, because there's always been this talk about like we need to diversify our audiences and things like that, and I'm just like, you know oftentimes people are like, oh, let's give some free tickets to these, to some LGBTQ folks, let's give some free tickets to, but I think that there's like a lot of steps that need to happen before, someone just gives me a free ticket. I think that there's like this trust needs to happen first, and showing up in these communities in a way that feel like there is trust and mutual respect. I think that's so important. And I don't have all the answers, but I'm always thinking about it and trying to find ways at which we can really sort of make theater for the people instead of like it being for like the elite.
Well, and I think what you're speaking to, which I love, which is what it's what I imagine theater can be, and what I try to approach, at least my process of being a journalist in this space
Mhm.
as, there's a difference between um, transactional and relational.
Mm,
So you have,
yes.
the idea, I'm going to give somebody a free ticket, or I'm going to give a group of people free tickets, or I'm going to produce a show during February because it's Black History Month, and hopefully everyone will come. And then the rest of the
Mhm.
time, I'm going to just do same stuff, different day.
Right.
That's very transactional to me. But when you really start going into the communities and working with the communities and sharing stories with the communities and figuring out ways to engage, which is what I love about what North Carolina Theater has done. They've done these all in series of videos, which I really appreciate, because it's about engaging those communities and
Yeah.
and forming relationships. So let's
Mhm.
make, as we open our theaters back all over the country, let's create those relationships and not make this so much about a transaction. You buy a ticket,
Right.
you come, it's about
Right.
relationships
Right. Right.
in
Right.
my imaginary world. That's what it's about anyway.
Yeah,
So that's
no,
what
in
wanted to.
mine too. In mine too.
Circling back to Lady Day and this North Carolina theater production, what do you hope audiences will take away from seeing this show, seeing Angela's performance in this iconic role?
Yeah. Um, I, I hope that folks learn new things about Billy's life.
Mm,
I I hope that people leave curious and excited about stories that are different from their own. I hope people leave um, with a new sense of empathy for folks' stories that they don't know. But and then I also hope that I hope that empathy um, is like I hope that empathy is sort of moved with or layered with action too, right?
mm,
It's not enough to just sort of empathize on what it meant for Billie Holiday to endure, circumstances that she shouldn't have, right? Through the lens of like what it
mm.
means to be policing, what it means to really be anti-black. So like have empathy for that, but then like what are some actionable steps? Like I hope it makes folks curious on like what it means, like how can I show up for communities that that need support, especially if you come to the show and you are in a place of privilege, that you can help and that you can support various communities. I hope people leave with joy, watching these incredible artists sort of journey through this role. I hope, and I hope there's like a demand for wanting more stories that challenge folks. More story. I hope there's a hunger for stories that like not only challenge, but stories that like maybe not reflect their own lives and stories, and sort of curious about wanting to know more. Um, and I hope people leave sort of proud of North Carolina theater and being able to come back from this pandemic and putting up this show and putting up this work um and grateful, grateful for the contribution to that Billie Holiday gave to American culture and American society. I'm
Mhm.
grateful for the work of all of the artists and the people and the individual and the hands and the care that goes into um, our communities enjoying a night at the theater.
Yes. Yes. It is so joyful. It's such a joyful experience, such a joyful place to be. I love North Carolina theater. So um
Me too.
if you could sit down, we started this interview talking about your mentor who sent you to a choir audition at the age of 10. If you could sit down with that 10-year-old young man in South Carolina now, what advice would you give him? What would you say to him?
Oh my
What would you
goodness.
say to young Jarvis?
Oh wow. Um, mm, that's such a great question. I would say, oh my goodness. Um, I would tell 10-year-old me that be okay with creating new family. Like like
Mm,
no, there was I think I've always had this sort of fight between like biological family and like the family that I created and have maintained outside of being home. And
mm,
I would say, like, really do value those relationships and um, uh, because you created a family, because you might create a family outside of the family that you grew up with, that is okay. And those people are going to be there and support you through all the many sort of changes and challenges that come up with life. And so just like honor the relationships and the lives that you connect with outside of home, because those have been truly valuable for me. um, and
mm.
it took me some therapy and having, some profound understanding of like of those deep connections and those relationships and the profoundness um, of those peoples and those connections that have really shaped my life and career. Um, yeah, and relationships are everything. Relationships are everything.
Mm. I love that. I love that. Everybody, you have to see this show. It's opens on Friday at NC Theater at the Duke Energy Center in downtown Raleigh, Duke Energy Center for the Performing Arts. Ticket information is available at nctheater.com. So opens this weekend, runs all next week. Plenty of chances to see it, to see Angela in this amazing performance, and to see this work that you've created, Jarvis. I'm so excited to see
Mm,
it this weekend.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank thank you for being here and sharing space with me this afternoon, sharing space with all of us. And I'd like to invite you all to come back and hang out with me tonight at 7 o'clock. We right here, Facebook Live. We're going to be talking with Heather Strickland and Patrick Torres from Raleigh Little Theater, and Candace Cox, who is a LGBTQ advocate about transgender representation and reimagining Cinderella. And if you want a preface to that conversation, you can listen to the podcast this week. If you tuned in late, this amazing conversation with Jarvis will live on our Facebook page. I'll be posting it on our website, and I will be doing extracting the audio from it for the podcast on Sunday. So please listen to this. This has been such a wonderful conversation. I feel like my cup is full, Jarvis, for the rest of the
Oh,
week.
oh wow. Well, awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you, Maya, for coordinating this. Everybody see this show. And I will see you at the theater. That's what I always say. So I'll see you at the theater, Jarvis.
See you at the theater. All right. Take care. Bye, y'all.
Bye, everyone.